And welcome to the Dave and Tiff podcast. And Tiff, a lot of stuff has been going on over the past weekend, coming into this week. And you can tell by our shirts if you're watching on Zoom. By the way, you can catch our podcast. You can either catch the video version on our Facebook page, Dave and Tiff, or you can catch it on YouTube. But also you can hear just the audio version on iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you catch your podcast. But if you're watching us on the video portion, we're both wearing Chaminade shirts because our guest today will be former, just recently retired athletic director for Chaminade Athletics, Bill Villa, who's now become the new inaugural executive director of the Hawaii Athletic Directors. I think it's Hawaii Interscholastic Athletic Directors Association. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did. HIADA.
HIADA. I just go by HIADA. But before we get to Bill, will be joining us shortly. News locally, if we go to college football, and it affects locally if our Hawaii team, University of Hawaii, has a lot to say about it. But the national perspective, last time on our last episode, Tiff, we talked about shoes falling, and another shoe has fallen. The Big Ten was one of the first to come out. They're going to go with an all-conference schedule. Before that, the Patriot League said they were not going to have their teams travel, and their fall sports were just going to play conference, and that affected our University of Hawaii because we had Fordham on the schedule, so that took away one game. Now the other shoe is the Pac-12 shoe, saying that they will follow suit and they will not play outside of their conference. That hurts the University of Hawaii even more because of the fact that it's 3 games that gets affected. They had a game scheduled against the opener at Arizona, then the home opener against UCLA, and then at Oregon in the first part of the season. So 3 games shut down. And we talked about other shoes falling. I got to think that the other Power 5 conferences are just going to follow suit as well.
You would think so, but to keep it within a Hawaii frame of mind, this one hurts. You got a money game at Arizona, part of the home-and-home deal that UH and Arizona had. Hawaii hosted Arizona last year. And then, of course, the big game at Oregon. That was about $1 million pay game. That was going to really help this athletic department. Now, that's on the fritz, obviously. And then, of course, your big marquee game here at home with UCLA, who hadn't been out to the islands for football in about 80 years or so. So you lose, like you said, those 3 games. You add on the Fordham game. Right now, you're looking at a schedule that doesn't start for Hawaii until October 3rd against Nevada, which would be the start of conference play. Now, there is one more non-conference game on the schedule. Of course, the October 10th date against New Mexico State. Who knows? Who knows what New Mexico State is part of the independent, so we'll see what they decide to do. There's a lot of schools out there, the independent route. What are they going to do? BYU lost a lot of games like Hawaii did, so everything has been changing by the week, by the day, almost by the hour. So it's a wait and see approach for many of these universities.
What's interesting though, and the very first league to make an announcement about not having fall sports, or they decided not to have fall sports, was the Ivy League. The Ivy League was also the first league back in March when we were getting ready to have the basketball tournaments, March Madness. The first one to say we are stopping our basketball season, and sure enough, boom, 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 everything else dominoed right after that. It's interesting that in the athletic perspective, the Ivy League doesn't catch a sniff compared to the other conferences and teams and so forth because of the competitive level. But yet, in this situation here with the pandemic, the Ivy League has been a trend-setting group. The Patriot League has made the next quick step here to say they're not going to travel, and how the big conferences now have fallen after those two kind of made their announcements. Now, you can say that Ivy League and Patriot League don't have as much money involved with college football as the Power Fives. So it's interesting. Pac-12 has a network. Big Ten has a network. ACC, SEC, they're obviously going to keep their conference games intact so that they can appease their networks. But the other fives, like the Mountain West,
the Group of Five,
and the independents, you mentioned BYU, and then Notre Dame are suddenly left to kind of deal with it after the fact. But that's kind of the nature of college football, isn't it?
It really is. And Notre Dame has NBC to fall back on. BYU, of course, with BYU TV. Of course, that's a regional network. Although a lot of cable companies do carry BYU TV. But like you said, it's been interesting following what the Ivy has done. They've been the trendsetter. They've been the one that's been more proactive as opposed to reactive, and they're really treating the health and safety of their students, their student athletes, at the forefront, because there's been a lot of the Power Fives that we've talked about that are trying to hold off as long as they can. We mentioned the Big Ten has come out and said we're going to do a conference only. The ACC has said that as well. Pac-10, Pac-12, and the SEC and the Big 12, for the most part, have been very, very quiet about this. Although, I don't know if you saw this, but earlier today, the Iowa State Athletic Director came out and said that if they don't play football, they're going to lose about $40 million. And that's one of the, I guess you could say, the bottom feeders of the Big 12. And it's just everybody wants to keep as many college football games as they can because they want to at least try and keep some of that money, not lose everything by giving the axe to all fall sports here in 2020.
And you talk about one of the shoes to drop. We're talking about how, obviously how big money football is and how it generates athletic budgets. We can even talk with Bill Villa, although on the Division II level, the elements of finances related to this pandemic. But I know what hit your heart really hard last week was Stanford dropping 11 sports, already making an announcement, we're going to shut down 11 sports, of which men's volleyball was one of the ones that got hit. So that I thought was pretty interesting because they're in a Power 5 conference. They're getting a lot of money that the other groups do not, but yet they already came out with the decision, we have to make that adjustment down already. And you mentioned Iowa State. So that is the first shoe on that level in terms of dropping sports. And you hope there aren't more shoes to hit that same level that Stanford has had to make.
We had breaking news on this podcast a couple of weeks ago regarding the whole Star advertiser. Couldn't Stanford University have thrown us another bone by allowing their information to come out that they were going to give the axe to 11 sports following the 2021 athletic season? Do that before we had the interview with Kawika Shoji, so he could have given us instant reaction, instant feedback to the situation. I mean, how selfish? Come on. But like you said, 11 sports. It's tough because when you look at how many sports Stanford has, it's about 35, 37 varsity sports, but a lot of them aren't money makers at all. You look at like lightweight crew, squash, some of these sports that it's very hard to draw to get people to come and watch. So it's hard to be a money-making sport when you don't have the opportunity to maybe charge or at least draw admission or have fans come and watch. It's tough. And for men's volleyball, like we had Kawika Shoji on last week on our podcast, it's a program that is very storied. It's won a national championship or two. It's had many All-Americans. A lot of players that are on the national team, current and former national teams, have come through Stanford. So it is a storied program. And for a sport that's been at the forefront of using the hashtag grow the game, this goes against that hashtag on all fronts.
I know. Kawika Shoji, we just had him on our last episode. He would have been perfect. The last time they won a national title was when Kawika was an All-American on that team 10 years ago. So that's hurting on the college sports. We'll talk to Bill Villa a little bit more about college athletics, the finances as it goes along with that. Another local thing, though, if we can touch, have you been watching UFC at all?
I've been watching a lot of the undercards, a lot of the prelims, because in these tough economic times, money's tight. And so anything that's free, they're able to stream, I'm watching. So I did get to watch the prelims for UFC 251. Saw bits and pieces of highlight videos of the Holloway juiced fight. Tough. A lot. It's still trending on Twitter, and just seeing all the reactions, island-wide, statewide, around the world. Holloway had that fight won, at least 3-2.
Yeah, I watched the whole thing. My son has become a fan of MMA, but you know, uh, he somehow got it free, so I got to watch the whole thing. And I
Kids are
watched.
smart these days. Kids
Yeah,
are smart these days. You taught them well.
he didn't learn it from me because if I could have figured that out, I would have jumped ahead of him and things like that. But I watched the whole fight, every round, and I would have said that he won rounds 1, 2, and 3. Now rounds 4 and 5 were given to the champion. I forgot his name already. But
Volkanovski.
God, that's why I always need you, Tiff. You can remember all these multi-syllable
That's why.
names. Yeah, multi-syllable names. But I thought Holloway got beat in those last 2 rounds. And I know that's where the controversy is. Some of it is maybe round 3, which was ruled kind of close, that could have gone either way, although should have been Holloway. Some felt that, hey, he won 3 out of the 5 rounds, so he should have gotten the decision. And even my son was telling me that a lot of times when you're judging, you go by what's more recent. And we hear about that in sports so many times. What happens the latest is kind of has that last impression even on a judge. So even though that 5th round where he got taken down just before the end, sometimes that impression stays with you. And although Holloway won the first 3, the impact, and maybe you take into account how the champion, what was his name again?
Alexander Volkanovski.
How Volkanovski was able to have more at the end and progress versus, Holloway was kind of running on fumes at the end. So, controversies always abound when it comes to fights, even in boxing back in the day, right?
Very much so. And also to give a shout out to Kailua's Martin Day, who looked very good in his undercard in his fight. Unfortunately got knocked out in the 3rd round, but 2 Hawaii guys in the first ever fight card on Fight Island. Very cool to see how Dana White and his group transformed that island, Yaz Island in Abu Dhabi, to become Fight Island. Very cool. And you have fights throughout this week, headlined by Dan Ige on Wednesday. So you're hoping that at least for Hawaii-based fighters, a Hawaii fighter can at least get 1 win out of the 3 of these Hawaii fighters in Fight Island, or on Fight Island.
Yeah, Dan Ige, by the way, Wednesday he's fighting. I can't believe I'm talking this much MMA. I've never talked this much MMA in my life. But he used to have the nickname the Governor for obvious reasons, but he says he doesn't like that. I think he goes by 50K.
50K.
50K. Now, Max Holloway, as I'm going to segue into why we're talking about nicknames, Max Holloway, he had a different nickname, but I always referred to him as Mad Max, from the movie Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. How about this? Mad Max Beyond the Octagon. Wouldn't that be cool?
There you go.
Yeah?
Very much so.
And then May, what's his first name now? Mike May?
Who?
The other Hawaii fighter you just mentioned. May. Day. Who was the other Hawaii fighter that fought on Saturday? Something.
Martin Day.
Martin
Day.
Okay, I'm getting confused because I was calling him Mayday. Like, hey, if you fight Martin Day and he gets you in the headlock, you better call Mayday. It can ring. It can ring. It can ring. The other,
yes, it can.
We'll talk about a little bit later. Washington Redskins is going to change their nickname because, by golly, after money talks, when the sponsors said, we're going to pull out if you don't change your nickname, finally Dan Snyder said, we got to change our nickname. So, if we've got some time, let's see if we can come up with our suggestions for nicknames for the new NFL Washington football team. So we'll get some time to that. Our guest is in the waiting room, in the green room here on our Zoom podcast. I'm going to admit him in. He's been the longtime athletic director for Chaminade University and just recently retired, but he's not going to just stay retired and play a whole bunch of golf. He's going to actually have another position, also the new executive director of the Hawaii International Athletic Directors Association, or the HIADA. And Bill, can you hear us? And there's Bill. Can you hear us, Bill? Oh, checking his audio. Hey, we can see you, Bill. Can you hear us? I think he can hear us, but we can't hear him. But he's looking good, Tiff. I'm sure he notices that we're both wearing Chaminade shirts in honor of his career
I hope
as
so.
athletic director. You know, and
There we go.
when you can hear us, Bill, can you hear us now? I probably can't hear us. Bill, can you hear us now?
I can. So sorry.
Oh, not at all. Hey,
I got to use my phone. I can't use my laptop. Something went wrong.
Oh, good. Well, glad
good.
you could figure that out and get connected with us. We appreciate you joining us. And first of all, you just retired as the longtime. How many years were you at Chaminade as the athletic director?
12 years.
12 years. Does it seem like yesterday when you first started?
Oh, yeah. The time flew. You know, it was a great place. I enjoyed it.
What was, like, you came from Mid-Pacific as the athletic director there. You went to Chaminade College Athletics. What was kind of the big, I guess you could say, kind of this aha kind of moment where you realize, oh, this is college athletics now, if there was one?
Well, I think the budget demands travel was certainly a huge aha moment, because looking at the amount of cost for travel and also the fact that you know, the Maui Invitational was part of our package at Chaminade. That was like, wow, that was huge. So those are some of the things that were aha moments for me. Yeah.
I want to ask you this related to the Maui. We're just talking about the Maui Invitational Tournament, and we're joined here by Bill Villa, who just recently retired as the athletic director of Chaminade. So, what was the exact relationship in terms of you? Chaminade's the host of the tournament, but it's really run by another entity. So, was it like the tournament gave you a percentage of revenue? I mean, how did the connection go with the tournament and Chaminade itself?
Okay, so our partners were Kemper Lesnick out of Chicago, and they're great people to work with, but they take care of everything that runs with that tournament. They find the teams, which is key. You got to have the right person to find the teams, and Dave Oldham's our guy. And they do all the event management. They coordinate the hotels, they coordinate the ESPN television contracts, sponsorships, everything, in exchange for us being the host, and then we get a percentage of the profit. Now that tournament ends up being, for athletics, our largest private source of funding. So it's very important for us to have that tournament. But you know, they run everything, but they work with us. So everything they do, they communicate with us to say, hey, we want to do this, that, and we work in partnership on those things.
Would you say, I mean, I laugh, but it's a serious matter, but it's like coincidentally, would you say you kind of retired at the right time in terms of not having to be the athletic director at Chaminade during this whole pandemic leading into this new academic year where there's so many question marks about school, students coming back, how that's going to be done, and then on your level, how athletics are going to be run? I mean, would you like to kind of say like, whoo, I'm glad I don't have to be the athletic director now?
Yeah, I mean, I had decided to retire just before the pandemic hit. I mean, so a lot of people are telling me my timing is really good because I don't really have to deal with this, and it's a tough thing. I don't want to make it sound like I bailed, because I didn't bail. It was just my timing was that way. It seems that way, but I feel for presidents, athletic administrators, everybody, student athletes, in how to deal with this situation, which is changing. Seems like, you know, at least every week, sometimes a couple times a week, that things change, and you know, we're this far into the you know, this pandemic, and then school's going to be starting up, you know, in a month or so. In the Pac West, we don't even have our schedule set. We don't even know yet exactly what we're going to do with our schedule. So I feel for everybody that has to deal with this situation. Yeah, it's not easy, and a lot of things is you don't have control. You know, athletic directors we have to wait to see what the government is saying we can do, and what the NCAA is saying we can do, what our presidents are saying we should be doing, and then we're looking at, you know, as athletic directors, you know, how can, you know, we just have to be ready for whatever decision is made on how we can move and when we can move. So I just feel for my friends who are athletic directors. It's tough.
It is. Tiff, I don't know if you have a question for Bill Villa.
I do. Bill, when in your time as the AD, and a lot of people know, especially from out here, that Chaminade doesn't have a football team. So when you don't have an athletic department that has the ability to draw from a football program, how creative have you been, or were you, and also the other coaches within the department, how creative was everybody in trying to make money for every sport to make this athletic department profitable?
Well, of course, the Maui Invitational is huge for us. Maui Invitational, that's huge. That's the biggest thing we got going for us. The other sports, you know, all we can do is we got booster programs. We have, in addition to booster, we work with our advancement office in fundraising efforts. Coaches run clinics to raise some money, you know, and then the coaches do a good job of, it's hard to raise a lot of money, and so the coaches do a good job of trying to stay in budget, you know, so that any additional monies they raise can be used to enhance their program. And you got to be creative. We run a golf tournament. We're able to raise some monies, but not huge amounts of monies.
You know, Bill, let's go hypothetical here. Let's say you are still the athletic director of Chaminade. And like you just mentioned how important the Maui Invitational Tournament is to your athletic budget. Let's say that had to be canceled. That tournament, because of the fact that, you know, travel, teams not wanting to participate, that tournament was canceled. What would happen suddenly to Chaminade Athletics at that point, do you think?
Interesting question. I did have that conversation with our president, and you know, she assured me that we would still maintain our athletic programs. Now, you have to have, in Division II, you have to have 10 athletic programs, and we have 10. So we would not be able to drop any type of any of the programs. That's you know, so, and we want to continue to be members of in the NCAA, and we want to participate in athletics. So, President is committed that she would find ways to try and help fund the programs for a year if she had to, if the Maui Invitational was gone. It would be tough. It would be belt tightening everywhere, but you know, I think she would work really hard on that. And what might help us too is, you know, in our conference, we're looking at schedule, and it's not exactly the best ideal thing for us, but we're looking in the Pac-West at maybe one of the options is just what we call pod scheduling. So the Hawaii schools would play only the Hawaii schools. Southern Cal schools would play Southern Cal, Northern Cal schools would play Northern Cal. Now the California schools, if they decided they wanted to, they could have some crossover games. But Hawaii, we would be just stuck in Hawaii. And you know, you'd be playing HPU and UH Hilo numerous times. At least it's a season. It saves a lot of money because travel is our biggest expense. So if that were the schedule, I think that Chaminade could survive the year if the Maui Invitational was somehow canceled.
We're talking with Bill Villa, just recently retired Chaminade Athletics Director, so he's happy he doesn't have to worry about that scenario should that even come across. Let's talk a little bit about your new position with the Hawaii Interscholastic Athletic Directors Association. So you're not just simply riding off into the sunset of retirement and playing golf and traveling the world. You're still going to be working. Explain what your new position is going to be.
Okay, it's a part-time position, fancy title, executive director. My job is to serve as a liaison between the HIADA, HHSAA, National Federation, and the National Interscholastic Athletic Association, and to communicate with the athletic administrators and school leaders throughout the state and plan and execute the annual HIADA conference. I'm pretty sure you're aware of that conference. That is the conference where legislative issues get passed or discussed and voted on. My job would be to secure contract hotels, speakers, vendors, exhibitors, and the continuing education program for the athletic directors. And then handle the overall HIADA operational budget and finances. That's right now that's the main task of that job right now. So I'm working on that.
Bill, how did you hear about this position and what made you apply for it?
That's a great question. I guess back in, I think it was in like January or so, I had lunch with Chris Chun, who's the HHSAA executive director. So Chris and I were talking, and Chris was saying, I was telling Chris that I was going to be retiring. And he said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I got to do something. I know I need to do something. I can't just not do anything. So he said, well, he knew that coming up soon was going to be the opening for this position. At the time, Chris was handling both the HHSAA executive director and the HIADA executive director. He handled both of those tasks. So he was going to be separating the HIADA task. So he asked me if I have an interest. He said it was a part-time job and be working with athletic directors, high school. So I'd be involved in that a little bit, and said that I'd be in charge of whoever got that job would be in charge of the HIADA conference. And I thought that was a pretty cool task. So that piqued my interest, and I applied and was fortunate enough to get selected. But the interest of it started from a lunch meeting with Chris Chun.
Well, congratulations to you on that segue, and then perfect. You got all your connections from back when you were a high school athletic director. Obviously, you maintained all of those connections even through your Chaminade years, and you've been a great mentor to a lot of those athletic directors who are in those jobs now. And I congratulate you on your new position moving forward, and thank you again for joining us, and especially dealing with the technical difficulties and still being able to make it.
Thanks you guys. I appreciate your patience with me.
No problem. Congratulations.
No problem.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Aloha.
That's Bill Villa, the new executive director of the HIADA, Hawaii Interscholastic Athletic Association. I think I got all of that together. And
you got it all together. You got it all together, Dave. But like you mentioned, and you're giving kudos to Bill. Kudos to him because he was having issues with the laptop, and rather than say, "Hey guys, sorry, I can't figure it out," I'm gonna go my backup route, get my phone, and still fulfill my obligation of coming on with you guys and coming on via my phone to do the interview. How great was that? On the fly too.
It did, and I'll tell you what, it sounded like landscapers were mowing his lawn, maybe outside his house or something like that.
They are outside of our condo building. They're doing some scalding work. I had no idea. There was no notice all weekend long that they're going to be doing this construction work that you could probably hear in the audio portion of the background. But
it's from you. Okay.
It's coming from myself, so I apologize. And of all the days, of all the times to be doing work, they're doing it now.
But you notice it kind of just stopped as soon as Bill is on. Oh, there, I hear it again.
There you go, see?
Hey, before we get to Tiff's Corner, before we get there, Tiff, I thought, the Washington, no longer the Redskins of the NFL, said they're going to change their name. Now, it's been a long kind of discussion about saying you got to change your name. And I think the whole movement now with civil rights really lit the fire for a lot more people. And so Washington will be changing their name. So I thought, why don't we throw in our suggestions in the hat as to what should be the new team for the NFL Washington franchise. So I got some interesting ones. I'll let you go first if you got any.
I'm kind of stealing this from James Gomez. He used to be on with the Bobby Kern show from time to time. He's a former radio guy in Denver, did a lot of Broncos work, and he actually ran the poll from Bet Online as to odds for certain names. And some of these names I do like. Kind of looking at the list right now, looking at Red Tails, I like Generals, Presidents, the Kings, Red Hawks. There's a few.
Like the Generals, isn't that the team that always played the Globetrotters and got lost?
Yes.
Washington Generals.
But I do like what the Washington sports teams have done of late. With the baseball team with the Nationals, hockey with the Capitals, keeping it somewhat of a patriotic theme, of a national theme, if you will. So maybe take the Kings out because there are a lot of schools, a lot of pro teams that utilize that nickname. Keep it something original, but keep it something to where all the other sports teams within the DC area kind of keep it with that theme.
Oh, and I got some for you here that hopefully will meet those parameters. Here's my suggestions. How about the Washington Politicos? Okay. The next one, the Washington 51s. You know why I came up with that one?
Why is that?
Well, there's been a kind of a advocacy of District of Columbia becoming the 51st state, becoming a state. So maybe that could be something that'll be popular with that advocacy group, the Washington 51s, with the, like 49ers, 51s. Anyway, next one is the Washington Independence. Declaration of Independence, and it also tunes in with Washington being independent. We don't want to change our name. We're just going to call ourselves the Independents. The next one is, now there's the Washington Senators, or they had been the Washington Senators. So I thought, what about the Washington Representatives?
There you go.
Right, the other side of the Congress. And the last one I had was the Washington Defenders. Now, I think there was an XFL team that was the Defenders, or was it Avengers, or was it another Marvel?
Avengers is the movie.
Okay, is there another movie? But Defenders, defender of our nation back, when we separated from Great Britain and became our own country. I don't know, something like that. Those are. I'm going to submit those and see if I can win the free bento or whatever it comes up with that. Okay, that's it let's go to Tiff's Corner, something a little bit more interesting.
All right, Dave. So we brought this up last week with Shannon Hopeau, the former Kapolei standout on the soccer program, who got picked up on a homegrown contract by the Sounders. Did get to play in his first official MLS game this past week. They played the San Jose Earthquakes, came to a 0-0 draw. Hopeau entered in the 77th minute. Committed one foul, so officially in the scorebook, but no goals, no assists. He will be playing in the next match this coming Friday, 3 a.m. Hawaii time. Are you going to have your DVR set for 3 a.m. on Friday when the Sounders take on the Chicago Fire?
I could have the DVR set. I definitely won't be up to watch that. I'll stay up to watch Korean baseball, but that's like 11 p.m. our time. That's more reasonable.
Another one, this just came in about 40 minutes ago. Hawaii Athletics, we talked about three Pac-12 opponents that are not going to be coming to play Hawaii, or the two that Hawaii won't be going to, and the one that's coming out here. So the three Pac-12 teams that aren't going to be playing Hawaii. This just came in. Robert Morris will be coming to Honolulu September 26th, which would right now be the scheduled season opener for the University of Hawaii football team.
Wow,
your instant reaction to Hawaii playing the one person of Robert Morris.
I think at this point, get Jane Doe or whoever you want to get to come and play. If you can fill a game and they're willing to come, at this point take it. You know, the fact that those three, especially the UCLA game, can you imagine how much ticket sales Hawaii could have had with that? Not only do they lose those money games of the at Arizona and the at Oregon, but the money they lose from UCLA coming here versus trying to fill it with Robert Morris. Now, I'm going to suggest that there are more people, if they have the games, are going to want to go because there's so limited football. But who knows? But yay, hope we can get that.
Well, right now, your home schedule, if there is a season, UNLV, New Mexico. Right now, your big marquee game is Boise State. You've got New Mexico State, Nevada, and now Robert Morris.
Ooh.
It's tough, but like you said, if you've got to get who you can at this point in time. And when the news came out last week Friday that the Pac-12 was going to not be playing non-conference games like Hawaii, BYU, and this has been a name that's been thrown out over the weekend, has been hit just as hard as Hawaii. So maybe they could renew the regular season rivalry of Hawaii and BYU.
You know, good point. BYU is needing games, and let's go. Why not go for the big hill? Why not give Notre Dame a call? They need games.
Why not?
Because if they're desperate enough, and let's face it, Hawaii is still a nice trip for their boosters and things like that. Granted, I don't know how the quarantine situation will be by then, but why not give them a call? Dave Matlin, if there's anything to call those two schools and say, hey, we got some space. Do you want it? Bring it on down. Maybe even a military academy would be a good one to fill as well. That'll be a big draw.
Bring out, who knows? Navy's part of the AAC. Bring out Army West Point. Bring out Air Force. Well, Air Force is part of the Mountain West Conference, but like you said, bring out all of the service academies. Why not? Yeah,
it could be a big draw. So here's just hoping we'll have a season. Crossing the fingers that we'll have a season. Because
have you been watching the TBT, the basketball tournament on ESPN?
I watched a little bit of it. I haven't been that desperate to loop into that just yet. But what do you think?
I love it. I love the fact they were the ones that have adopted this Elam ending. The NBA used it as part of their All-Star Game festivities in the fourth quarter this past season. But I've been watching the TBT because a former Moanalua standout, Marcus Keene, one-time Na-Menahuni product, has been doing very, very well for his team. They're seeded 22nd. Their name is Sideline Cancer. They are in the finals. They have upset 4 teams, including a 4-time champ of this tournament, and they are all the way into the final for $1 million. You can see the final tomorrow. That's Tuesday, 1 p.m. on ESPN.
I was surprised that this tournament, I thought it was a brand new tournament, but it actually has been running for a few years, right?
Yeah, this is the 6th year, 6th or 7th year.
6th or 7th year. I'm enjoying 1980 replays of the Lakers and Celtics, Lakers and Sixers in the NBA Finals. That's kind of reliving the days of Showtime Laker basketball.
A couple more here. We talked about Max Holloway. How about the fact that he put his UFC 251 kit available to be sold on eBay, all proceeds going to the Hawaii Food Bank? Checked earlier this morning, the current bid, there's been 50 bids for this kit. The current bid is $19,300.
Wow. Oh, that's a good one.
It really is. It really is. And Rob DeMello, part of HIADA, the sports director, he had an interview with Rob Mizutani last week. He's the CEO of the food bank, and just very appreciative, very humbled by this gesture. And even though he didn't win the fights, the fact that Holloway still followed through with what he wanted to do post-fight and to make this generous donation, whatever this kid is sold for, and give it all to the Hawaii Food Bank. This young man out of Waianae is doing quite well and really representing this state very fondly.
Yeah, good for him.
Finally, Dave, the man who's going to be joining our podcast next week, the libero for the Hawaii men's volleyball team, Gage Worsley. Him, along with his brother Joe, former Rainbow Warrior Dalton Solbrig, They won one of the more prestigious 3-on-3 grass tournaments on the volleyball side this past weekend in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. There's a very amazing story on their run through the tournament to ultimately win. Go to volleyballmagazine.com. I'll keep it short here. Solberg rolls his ankle in the tournament. The coach who was overseeing their team had to play because Solberg went out. He later then cramps. And so the Worsley brothers had to pull somebody from the crowd to join their team, and they win their final 2 matches. And these teams are AVP guys, players who are overseas as professionals. Joe is going to be in his 2nd year as a professional in Germany this coming fall. What a run. Volleyballmagazine.com, read the story, great insights, and we'll talk with Gage next week about it, because from what I read, he led that team and put them on his back.
I hope they gave that guy a T-shirt or something, that guy they pulled from the crowd.
I hope so too.
Well, great Tiff's Corner. We want to thank Bill Villa, who joined us as the outgoing Chaminade Athletics Director and now the new Executive Director of the Hawaii Hawaii Interscholastic Athletic Directors Association. Just say HIADA and it's so much.
There you go. I'm also hoping, Dave, that next week, Monday, when we record, that there will not be any construction going outside of my condo. So my apologies for those of you listening. Thank you so much for bearing with us, bearing with all of this extra noise coming from outside, and we will see you in a week.
Hey, if we had our own studio, we wouldn't have to worry about that. But this is how we do it in the new normal. We have jackhammers going on there. Hey,
Yes.
thanks, Tiff. Thanks again for all your work that you do. This is Dave Kawada. Until next time, saying adios.